Welcome to this CAPTIVATE session presented by the Contemporary Archive Project with support from the National Arts Council. I'm Mbusi Mzolo, your host for this session, in conversation with street photographer Rory Jacobs. Join us as we explore the nuances of people, images, and labels. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in and deciding to be part of this session today. I am Mbusi Mzolo, and I'm here to help Rory navigate his presentation and just try to create some coherence and make sure that your participation is included in the session. Rory is a street photographer. We had a chat, I think 2 days back, and we were that street photography was one of the labels we discussed. And so the title of this session is People, Images, and Labels. So Rory said he's fine with being called a street photographer, and he will go into detail as to why some people have an issue with that term. And he will also be discussing his street photography, which mostly documents everyday life. And then he will share what his thought process is towards the making of the images. And another thing, or some of the other things we discussed, was the use of terms as it relates to photography, like using take instead of make, and shoot, and all those terms that we are trying to move away from, like some circles of the photography or art world are trying to introduce new ways of thinking, which is what CAP does. And then there are people that feel like some terms should stay, or that the language use shouldn't be the main focus over the work that's being made. And I have been consuming some content in preparation for this session. And there's a quote from something I was reading that I feel like applies to Rory's work and what we're trying to do with this session. So just gonna read that and then let Rory introduce himself, and then he's gonna present the work that he's been doing under certain chapters. So the quote is from Mel Gooding. It's an essay on audio arts, but I feel like it applies to Rory. It starts, so I would classify Rory as, okay, the quote is, he is the artist as observer, as the Eurasian wanderer who encounters what is happening and keeps a record. He is not the artist as inventor or magician, nor as philosopher visionary. He is rather the artist as editor, curator, listener, receiver. He is the artist as an anthropological field worker. So if you, or end quote, if you switch the listening and put in photography, I feel like that quote applies to a street photographer who documents everyday life, and then he will let us know why he chooses to document what he documents, and like we'll go on to discuss labels such as staging, if he stages the images, the framing, and why he chooses. Rory,
Yes, sir.
please take over.
Thank you, Mbusi. That's an interesting quote. I've never heard that quote before, and I think it's actually quite accurate, especially around the curation and the editing down um, of of images in this context. So I'm Rory Jacobs. I'm a street photographer from Durban, and I've been doing street photography since 2013, 2012. But before I get into my pictures and a little bit of background about my work, I just want to tell you guys how I came to photography. So I'm not a formally trained photographer. I haven't been to any kind of varsity or school for photography. I'm completely self-taught. In fact, the image that you see on the picture on the screen right now is of a series of books called The Photo. And these are from these were around my household growing up. My father used to get these sent in the mail, or they used to come into CNA for like 50 cents on a monthly basis. And the book was made up of all these kinds of the what is it inserts, and each of these inserts used to come every month or every 2 weeks, and he used to fill up those sleeves. And within this, anything that you can search on YouTube about photography, whether it's about lights and shadow, something technical, wide angle lenses, different styles of photography, portraiture, candid photography, that kind of thing, is all contained within the pages of this book. And growing up, I used to just read these books back to back to back. And that's how I got introduced to photography. So, I used to go through these pages. I still have them today. I have them in my home. I mark them. I still go back to them because I don't think much has changed in terms of photography, besides the advances in technology, you know. So this was my kind of introduction to photography. Even had the greats like William Klein, Henri Cartier-Bresson. There were stories on Magnum photographers. There were even things where they used to give you assignments, go and shoot your neighborhood. Maybe amateur photographer versus a professional photographer. They used to show their pictures and how they would approach a kind of subject or a topic. Yeah, and that's how I kind of got the photography bug. The thing that attracted me to street photography was that now that I could, I was interested in it. I kind of learned and my way and navigated through the dark of, how to use a camera and that kind of thing. Was that, okay, what do I shoot? And what I still love about street photography today is it's something that you can pick up your camera and you can just go and do it. You don't need budgets. You don't need to organize models. You don't need to, get some brand to give you a brief to go out and shoot something. Pick up your camera, go into the world, and you can capture it as you see it. And in parallel to me, looking through all these kind of booklets that my father used to get, he obviously was into photography, and he documented basically our whole childhood and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pictures we have laying around. So I was born in 1982, so it's all pictures from the 80s, 90s, and what is cool about it, it's like our own personal analog Instagram, as it were, for our family. So we have all these pictures, and my father used to take them and, follow us around his camera. And the back of them, my mother used to go and caption them, right? So Rory going fishing. So that's me over there. And that's how I got my, yeah, caught the photography bug. But today, we're going to talk about people, images, and labels. And I just want to thank Cap upfront here for having me on. It's really is a privilege. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to come and talk about my photography. So I take pictures of many things in the streets. There's nothing that's kind of off limits. I'm not the kind of photographer or street photographer that focuses on a particular subgenre of street photography. I'm not going there and only shooting light and shadow or just doing architecture or just gesture or these kind of clever types of photography. But just to keep on theme today, I'm gonna show only pictures of people, only images of people, and that's gonna be where I'm gonna center all the conversations around. The only picture that doesn't have a person is this one. So this is just to contextualize that I go into Durban and I take a lot of pictures in my home city. And even when I've started doing photography or street photography, what is it, 11 years ago, the first place I went was into the city. And another part of my childhood was my mother dragging us into the city every single weekend to do all the kinds of shopping we used to do in the city. So whether it was clothing shopping, grocery shopping, Christmas shopping, all of that kind of stuff was done in the city. So we used to walk the city flat almost like every Saturday. And the city just became another place. And I became so familiar with the city that I feel quite at home there, even though I've never actually lived in the city, as it were. So I want to start off um, talking about something that caught my eye. And my the way I approach street photography is I go into the world with quite an open mind. And I don't go with a preconceived idea of what I want to get. But when I get into the city or if I get into a scenario, I might see something that becomes a bookmark in my mind, and in my subconscious mind, really. And then I start thinking about it and thinking about it, and then I start seeking out those images. Um, Most of the time, it's subconscious that I start doing that, but sometimes it's actually quite conscious. So this image that you see here of this woman was taken um, in the market in Warwick Junction. And I saw this woman walking up to me. She had this massive umbrella. We under this this kind of covering. And I just turned over, lifted the camera to my and took a picture. And as I took the image, one of those bookmarks got put into my mind, which was, this massive umbrella of hers and how she is um, shaded from the sun with it. And as much as I liked the picture, I didn't think there was anything special about it, but I did like the idea of, this shape. I was quite attracted to it. And that was one of the things that made me think, okay, how can I do more of this? And sometimes when I go through this process, it doesn't happen in one session. I don't go down onto the streets and then this is now I'm only going to look for people holding umbrellas. It's, I take the picture, have the thought, forget about it, and I carry on taking, going to things that check me. But it is there, and then maybe the next time I go out, or the fourth time later I go out, it's still there. And as I start developing these kinds of ideas, I think, okay, how can I make it even more interesting? So, the previous image is a woman. She's in black, and the image is quite monotone. And then I start exploring, and I go and look at what's the opposites of that. So now lots of people, bright color, and this image is really very Durban, for one, but even just the color and the what comes through in the green, the yellow, the red, the robot there that represents those three colors as well. How the how the umbrella is framed within the two posts between the robots and that street light on the left. I really enjoyed, and this is when I thought, okay, you know what, let me start going after these kinds of moments on purpose. You know, how does this massive umbrella looks like this? It encapsulates a lot of the scene. There's even a woman there that's showing, you know, as she's walking across the street, she has a bag and she's ducking or trying to protect herself from the harsh rays. And 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 I actually enjoy when I get these kinds of what is it, themes, because it brings a little bit of purpose to when I go out onto the street. And and then I get these kinds of images. So, you know, going back from something that is so singular to something that is so intense, um, and then everything in between. And then I thought, okay, let's, you know, bring those two together. So a singular image, or or a person that's quite singular, but still bringing in that color, and that intensity, of that color, and even that you know that washed Durban sunshine sometimes. So so I started exploring them, and I started looking at, you know, how can I stretch these concepts on the streets and these ideas, and how can I go out and find them. And I particularly like this image of this woman relaxing. She's, you know, s- she's a vendor. She's selling things on the street, and but she's quite calm about it. You know, you get those vendors that are out there, they shouting, trying to sell you everything. And she's just here to like, who comes to buy something comes, people who pass. Um, but then I thought, even though I love this image too, you know, as I'm walking down the street taking pictures of other things, um, I came across this kind of scene. And what's cool about this is that I was actually shooting early morning in the streets, and then I spoke to another photographer, street photographer, named of Manalisi, and he came and he joined me, and his style of street photography, or the way he goes about it, is very different to mine. And so it was the first time we were on the streets together. And he came a bit like late morning, sort of streets started filling up, and you know, everything got a bit more busy, a bit more intense. And the his style is he's always moving, always moving, always moving, always in motion. And I was actually struggling to keep up with him. I met him around the, where was it? City War. And once we met up, said our hellos, I think for like an hour and a half, we didn't stop walking. We was walking. I'm trying to keep up with him, keep up with him. And the intensity of that, plus the city's energy, um, when I saw this scene, I thought it, you know, really captured that, especially with now again with the umbrella, the bright orange, and the vividness of it. Um, and the the imagery is something that, you know, you often come across in Durban, which is these. It's just it can be intense, the amount of color and activity you see. You can see the pictures a little bit out of focus. I don't mind that at all because it shows the movement, and it also just adds to that energy again. Um, And just one more image that's exploring this theme around umbrellas and shade and protection from it. I think this is my favorite image out of the lot. And it's just something about the young lady's expression where she's kind of protecting herself from the world, protecting herself from the sun, and you know, the detail in a dress. And it's something that's quite peaceful, even though her face looks like it has some worry on it. Her expression is quite you know, it draws you in. And I think once I got to this point, once I captured this image and the variety of other images beyond just what you see here today, I felt like I captured what I wanted to capture, in terms of this narrative, this theme, this idea of, this intense Durban sunshine and protection from the sun.
Thanks, Rory, for that. The first edition of, or the first episode of the presentation. With the images that you've shown, you have mostly addressed the aesthetics of the images. Do you, like, in your making process, do you ever think about how the images will be interpreted by the audience, or is it mainly about how you feel the image looks, and for you it's just communicating what's in the frame, and whatever the audience infers, it's something that you can't control, and it's not something that you can have like a
Mm.
plan for.
I think I fall into the camp of the latter. So which is that, I go out to take pictures, I do it for myself. I experience a lots of fulfillment from it. I think a lot of people that know me in my life, they often talk about, I'm always with my camera, I'm taking pictures all the time, but nobody ever sees my pictures. Um, and so I, yeah, the first and foremost, I take pictures for myself. The second thing is, as far as how people interpret it. Yeah, that's exactly where I stand on it, is that I can't control what people think, or see, or how they interpret it. I can explain it to them. I can say what my intention is. I can show them things in the image and what my thought process was. But at the end of the day, they're gonna think what they want to think and pull from it what they want to pull from it, which is quite nice. I love talking to people and then they see other things in my images that I have never seen before. And I love having dialogue around that. But yeah, I'm okay if people interpret it in a different way.
Thanks. And do you feel the term street photography or street photographer um, discounts the level of effort that goes into making images, or does it place it in a lower position as other types of photography? Like,
Mm.
what are your thoughts around that? And then people having issues with being called street photographers. What do you think of that label of street photography? Does it make the work seem less important? Like,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts around that?
So just on the term, on the label, I suppose, on the label, street photographer or street photography, um, I love the term. I absolutely love the term, and I think that you do need something to put some guardrails around. Okay, this is the kind of lane that I'm in. But I do know that lots of people interpret it in very different ways. Some people say that it can only be candid and it can't be staged. Anything, things can't be staged. I fall into that camp. So I think it should absolutely only be candid, not set up. Other people feel differently. Again, I'm okay with it. You think what you uh, want to think, and you can interpret it how you want to interpret it. As a street photographer, I don't feel offended if somebody else has a different opinion about it. In terms of the craft of it, and if people think less of it, um, I would encourage people to try it, and they can see how difficult it is to find something on the street that's when people look at the images, it draws them in, whether it's the color, whether it's the shape and composition, because everyone is walking around every day witnessing life. And people who can see something interesting in that, capture it and share that, and where other people look and like, okay, that's cool, or I've never seen, or I've never seen a scene in that way before. I didn't know that was anything special to look at. This little, 250th of a second, or 125th of a second, that's captured. Um, I would say people think that it's easy, or if it's a bit lesser of a craft of photography, go try it and then see.
Okay, cool. Before we proceed, I would just like to let everyone know that there will be like 10 minutes towards the end of questions
Yeah.
based on Rory's presentation. You can think of what you would like to know. And
And yeah, you can ask me anything, guys. You can ask me about gear. You can ask me about photos. You can ask me about opinions on the, mo- you know, yeah, anything. I'm open to anything. So,
you can also, sorry, you can also
so,
put your questions in the chat if you don't want to speak, and then we will ask Neve to read out the questions, or I will read
yeah,
out the questions, but there's a platform to ask. Thanks, you may proceed.
yeah. So this image is, I actually went out to shoot, and somebody who shoots with me a lot, actually, by the name of Ricky Laidlaw, came through, and another street photographer by the name of Wandile. On a Saturday morning, we went into the city and we're doing some street photography. And what often happens when you go out with other people, you end up, just having these big conversations around street photography, camera equipment. You talk about other photographers and asking if have you seen so and so's work. And because of that, you end up being together. And whenever that happens, I tend to not shoot as much because I feel like we might be getting the same thing. Or I try to capture something different. And at this particular time, actually you can see Ricky's and Wandile's shadow there in the bottom right hand corner. So I actually enjoy going out because it forces me uh, to try to think differently. And at this particular time, I turned my camera down to the ground, and I was just looking at these kind of shapes, the shadows, and I was playing with the idea of this, the symbolism. So at first, so the the cross there in the shadow, the Mercedes-Benz sign, and I was like, just trying to do something a bit different, and I started exploring this idea a bit more. And I thought, okay, this looks a little bit interesting, with the two figures and the shadow and the woman pointing her hand up. We have this cross-like figure again. And again, this was something that got lodged in my mind, and which was, okay, this cross kind of shape. And it stuck with me for a few weeks while I walked around the streets, took many, many other pictures. But I started to try to develop it, push it a bit further, and thinking, okay, let me actually go out and look for that and see how I can bring it into my images to make it a bit interesting. Couple mornings later, came across this scene, a guy in a barber shop. Looking down, it looks almost like he's in a confessional. We have the shadow that's hitting the wall there that has this cross-like figure again. And instantly, my eye was turned to it. So I captured the scene. And I think, yeah, I think I got closer to something that I wanted to see, what I was trying to capture. But I still didn't feel like I absolutely got what I wanted, even though I liked the image. A few more sessions out, and I came across this scene. And this was where I felt like I finally got what I didn't know I was looking for. And these two women were walking through the streets. Again, I think this was around in the market area. And they they're walking up, down, left, right, on the platforms, over the bridge. And once they got to this staircase here, they were making their way down the staircase, and the staircase is quite narrow, quite at a steep decline. And just the shape of like these crosses on their back, how they were making their way down the staircase, which looked like quite it was quite labored. It was quite labored. But I think what I enjoyed and what struck me as, okay, I think I've gotten closer to what I was looking for is the energy, the brightness, the the lightness of the image. A lot of my pictures look quite raw and quite intense sometimes. And this just felt very bright, optimistic. It felt like a Sunday morning. It wasn't a Sunday morning. But it had that energy that I didn't know I was looking for in comparison to the other images. And I think it needed this these kind of like figures that were really, really up close and dominated the scene, even though their backs are to us. So, Mbusi, I see a lot of questions coming up. I don't know, are we going to wait till the end of the session to take those, or if they're related directly to these images?
Um, is this section of the presentation then, was this the last
Yeah,
image on?
yeah.
Okay. Think you can take two
Okay.
question, yeah, and then we'll proceed. Uh,
Just read them to me. I can't see. I can't see them.
oh, okay, sorry. Uh, Devon, I
Yeah.
think that's how it's pronounced.
Mm.
Um, Saying I was totally unaware that the term street photography was seen negatively. Can you elaborate? Is it seen as less skilled? I think we've just addressed that, but if you feel like there's more that you can add, we can
Um,
answer that one.
um, well, I didn't say it's a negative term. You did. So, I think maybe some people might see it as a lot of chance, or assume that it's a lot of chance. They might think that people are going around and they just shooting and until they get home, they look at all the images and then they pulling out, okay, here's a good one. This looks interesting, this looks interesting, this looks interesting, puts it together. I think that might bring some credence to that it's could be looked at as lesser of the photography arts. But I mean, I don't believe that.
Thanks. That was the only question that I saw about the presentation. The other question was about sharing screens and stuff like that. But before you proceed, please just address the matter of presenting your work.
Yeah.
Like, because you mainly do it on the work that you do share with the public. It's
Mm.
mainly the street photography because you do other kinds of photography. But the
Yep.
street photography that you do, you mainly share it through Instagram.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think of the the importance that's placed on the platform where the work is presented and the merit of the work? Do you feel your thoughts around like having street photography in a gallery compared to having it like in on Instagram or another online platform?
Yeah.
Do you feel that what do you feel the connection between those two and how people view the the quality of the work
Yeah.
based on how it's presented?
So I think that so firstly I do care a lot about how my work is presented. And I give a lot of thoughts into that. Okay, not just a platform, but um just how it's presented, how big is it, how small is it, what images are next to it, and that kind of thing. In terms of Instagram, I mean, that's the world we live in. I like Instagram. Um, I used to like it a lot more for images. It's a platform that's bigger than images these days, it seems. And I just take it for what it is. People are going to spend less time on your images, as they're scrolling through because there's always something better, um, below it. And I think that ultimately, um, it's a it's good for what I do, for what photographers do. Ultimately, it's good. There's lots of negative things about it, but ultimately, it's good because most of the contemporary photographers that I know today, I wouldn't know if it wasn't for Instagram. So there is that. My preferred kind of medium to one day present my work is in a book format. I would love to do a gallery show, but a book format where somebody can pick it up, hold it, you know, here's the images that I want to display that sit in between these two covers, and it could be in the order and in the narrative that I want to tell. I think for me, the pinnacle of display my work is in a book format.
Thanks. You may proceed with the presentation, and then after that section of the presentation, we'll check whether we have more questions,
Okay.
and I'll read them out to you.
Okay. Um, when you're walking through the in and around the city, there's lots of life that you see, and there's all kinds of different people from different walks of life. And I think Durban has gotten a bit of a negative there's a lot of negative assumptions about the city. Um, some of them are warranted, but I think that there's people who either have never been to into the city before, or people who haven't been there in years. But y- you know, there's there's families that live in the city. There's professionals that live in the city. You see the people, I live in the suburbs, and you can see these people in the morning running with all the gym gear and the expensive Nikes and whatnot. You see that in the city too. And when I often go before work when I want to go and go and take pictures. So you see all the school kids getting ready and uh going to school. This young lady looks very unhappy that she's going into school, but I wanted to show that part of the city as well, not just the roughness of it, as it were, or the rawness of it. And I do know that sometimes I'm very self-aware where I start showing work or posting work, and or even just experiencing the city, and I notice, okay, there's a lot of the what could be perceived as the negative aspects of the city that could come through in my imagery, and it can't only be viewed that way. And the school kids going to school, I just started picking up on it more and more, and I wanted to show that part of the city too. And there's a certain kind of independence that you don't see, once you start leaving the city, especially in the suburban areas. And that independence, you see young kids, they're making their way to school on their own, they're catching buses, they're taking public transportation, they stop in and they buying fruits and they're making their way to school. And it's a different kind of look as how people live their lives in such close proximity in a place like KZN. But as much as I was capturing these, again, I thought another thing that I did pick up was not only are these kids very independent, but you also have these families that they are just like the rest of us, want the best for their kids. And, they're keeping them safe and they're making sure they get to school and that kind of thing. And as I said, you don't see much of that. You don't hear much of this kind of narrative around the city. And I was trying to capture something um, that that showed that in a nice way. And then, moreover, what I also notice is that there are also a lot of fathers, lots and lots of dads that are taking their kids to school, so to creches, to primary school, big kids, high school kids, and they walk into with their fathers. And I think it's quite a sweet thing to see, like this senior early morning, big, strong man, and he's holding his son's hand and he's taking him through the streets of the city. And as I said at the beginning of this series, like there are people who fear going into the city, and rightfully so. There's a dangerous element of being in the city, but there's more to it than that. Like these kinds of scenes and these kinds of narratives. But even though I wanted to show this, I am still not necessarily a documentary photographer. And I think, like I think street photography and documentary photography are quite close cousins, and one bleeds into the other so seamlessly, I feel. So even though I enjoy these kinds of pictures, I still want something that's visually interesting and has some kind of punch to it. Um, and I got to this image. What happened upon this image? And what I loved about this is it's kind of encapsulated everything that where I was getting towards, which is, a father um, looking after his children, making sure they get to school on time. In this scene, the father has his youngest kid's backpack on him. He's got his phone out. I don't know if he's messaging work or whatever, but I remember seeing this, and there was the father was so like, just on it. Like they were so much intent with the way these three were walking, and it was and this vivid, bright kind of red and green, and the morning lights. And even though I wanted to show that, okay, there's different narratives in the city and all that kind of stuff, as I said, I still wanted there to be the street picture where there's a bit of impact with light, shadow, and then again, as I raised my camera to take the picture, this kid just turned and looked directly at me, which I felt was just perfect.
Thanks.
Mm.
Okay, I think there's two more questions in
Yep.
the chat, but before we get to those questions, I also have a question. The images you've shown uh, exclusively have Black people or non-white people
Mm.
as subjects.
Yep.
Is that something you are aware of? And
Yep.
if yes, is it because Black or non-white people make for more interesting subjects,
Mm.
or is it a matter of having of non-white people being more accessible as subjects? And also attached to that question is the issue of consent. How do you
Mm.
navigate the
Yep.
dynamics of consent when you are making images?
So, in terms of consent, I don't think I've ever been stopped and asked. Nobody's ever asked me to delete or to stop taking a picture of them. I've been, like I said, been shooting for 11 years in the city. And you'll see in some of my images, I get quite close to people, and nobody has ever said, don't you dare take a picture of me. Not yet, at least. But I am sensitive to it. And But I have had people who have come and talked to me, like ask me, "Hey, what are you doing? Why are you taking pictures and that kind of thing?" And I explain, I do it for art. I'm a photographer. I'm interested in street photography. And 9 out of 10 people are, okay, cool, that's interesting. Oh wow, that's amazing. Okay, cool. And in fact, most of the people, if I stop to go and buy something from a street vendor or something, most of the time people are like, please be careful. Please watch out with your stuff. You know what I mean? It's never from a point of why are you taking pictures. It's more just be careful while you're out there doing it. Your other question about race. The simple, I am sensitive to that, but the simple truth about it is that we live in Africa. We live in South Africa. Most of the population, the majority of the population, is black. So that's what you see on the streets. Do I exclusively take like do I pick and choose, or do I think a certain ethnic group is more interesting than another? No, I don't. In fact, a bit later on, you will see some difference in the kind of people that you see. So, yeah.
Thanks. Okay, I'm gonna read something from Peter Matlor.
Mm.
Says, "Hi Rory, how do you decide between?" So I don't use this word, the S word. Uh, how do you choose between capturing in color versus black and white? But he said shoot.
Uh,
That was the S word.
yeah, shoot. We'll talk about that later because I say shoot and take and that kind of thing. Um, Uh, so I used to exclusively shoot black and white. So when I first started shooting street photography, I exclusively shot on film. I shot in black and white. I used to develop my own black and white pictures at home, and I think it's one of the best ways to learn composition and framing and that kind of thing. And um, after a few years, I started getting, more interested in color. Then I started shooting color a lot more. And now I kind of go between the two. But I predominantly shoot color right now. I just think that I think it determine what makes me decide is what is the place or the environment that I'm shooting. I think a place like Durban really lends itself to color. There's so much color. There's so much vibrancy in the color, and I think that that's what makes me make up my mind about which way I'm gonna go.
Thanks. I think we can go on
But
for 20 more minutes
let me go first.
or 10, yeah, 10 more minutes of the presentation of five, and then allow for space for 10 minutes of questions so we can maybe wrap it up by
Okay.
25.
Um, another thing is, lots of hardworking people in the city, and early mornings. The city starts coming alive from very early. As you can imagine, the people that deliver bread are kind of some of the earliest risers in the country. And I saw this guy, sleeping in his vehicle. The shop owners were offloading, all the bread at the back, and he was just having the moments of rest. Um, and again, thinking, okay, this is interesting. How can I do more with this? Somebody or you asked me earlier about consent. I remember this picture vividly. I was out in the streets with Ricky again. We walked past the scene, and I saw this guy sleeping, and he just looked so peaceful, but he's on this heavy machinery, and there was so much noise in the city. Even at this hour, a taxi was going past blaring, and it was so quiet. But so I took the picture, and somebody's writing on the picture. Um, so I took the picture, and this was one of those times where the environment or the people around uh, alerted the guy in the picture that I was taking his picture. I remember I took about 2 frames. Felt like I got it. What I wanted to capture. Walked down the street, got about 25 meters, and I could hear this commotion happening in the background. There was another guy shouting something, another guy shouting something. Eventually, I see the guy that's in the picture bolting towards me at full speed, and I turned and I started sort of walking towards him. But as we got like right up to each other, he stopped and he basically asked, "What am I doing? Why am I taking this picture?" Not in an aggressive way. And I could read his body language instantly that it wasn't about me taking a picture for whatever my reasons are. But he didn't want to know why. And I think I got we spoke, I showed him the picture, and I think it was, you know, the other people that he worked with was bringing his attention to that, yeah, if someone's taking your picture. And I think it was perceived as, oh no, I'm gonna get him in trouble at work, you know. And I was saying, no, absolutely not. It's just, I walk around the city, I take pictures of interesting things. I showed him the picture. He's like, oh, that's cool. Turn around, walk back to work, and I carried on my way. So yeah, just to one of the questions earlier about consent, this was one of the times where someone in the picture actually asked me, why have you taken a picture of me? And then I kind of got to this scene where I saw guys sleeping, sitting up, and this was like middle of the day kind of thing. But middle of the day, and if there was uh, a camera facing the other way, you'd see the street was busy, 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 busy. There were people walking left, right, and center. And this guy he just looked so peaceful and so, out of the environment, as it were, consciously, that that it just looked like I actually wish there was something in the scene that could illustrate like how busy the street was behind me. But yeah, I just like the setting of it. I liked how peaceful it is. I like how he's cradling his face in his hand. Um, and yeah, it was quite sweet, as it were. Okay.
Thanks. I think uh, we have a question. It
Yeah.
was, or it is, from Rohini, which touches on mostly on consent, but
Yeah.
I just read out the whole message so that you can be able to extend your views on what you've already shared about consent.
Yeah.
Says your work is really inspiring, and we never
Thank you.
really take a moment to experience city life, and it's incredible to view these images. So
Thank you.
then the question is, how do you ensure your images are ethically produced without crossing boundaries of people's personal space? You can just um, offer more thoughts around that since you've shared some of your thoughts around the subject.
Yeah. I think, like I said, I am very sensitive to it. I'm not there, sticking a flash in somebody's face that like kind of takes them out of the moment or blinds them for a second. I'm not, holding up my camera and pushing it away from me and sticking it in somebody's face. When I go out to shoot, it's I don't try to duck and make any kind of to be covert about what I'm doing. I'm in the street, people see me, I get up close, and I'm always holding the kind of camera to my eye. So as I mentioned before, in terms of consent, they see me. I'm there. If anyone asks me to, hey, please don't take a picture of me, or don't take a picture of me, or even if they quite aggressive about it, I have absolutely no problem with deleting it because I get it. I'm not trying to make anybody feel uncomfortable. My intentions aren't to exploit anybody. So that's what keeps me that's what keeps me comfortable, is that my intentions, I know what my intentions are, and they're not there to exploit anyone. Okay.
Thanks. My
I don't.
question to like sort of wrap this up is the label staged or staging.
Mm.
Oh, I think I told you this when we had a chat 2 days ago about um, having a conversation with a photographer, and then we were looking at an image. And I was like, I like it because it's not staged. And then
Mm.
she was like, all photos are staged. And how do you feel about that? Like, because her thinking was you decide what to take out of whatever situation you're looking at, and that's a form of staging. So it's like staging real life. And
Yeah.
with you take, I mean, you make images out of the ordinary because people are just going about their day, and then you spot something that you feel that is interesting and can make an exciting image, or it's worth documenting. How do you feel about the term staging? Is street photography staged? Does staging only apply when you like what are your thoughts around that term staging?
Um, they simple. It's not. That's my thought. I don't think every picture is staged. Um, every maybe a lot of pictures are framed. It has a particular point of view of that photographer, but stage, nah. Nah, I don't think you. I don't. I disagree with that. That every image is staged. Simple as that.
Thanks. Would you like to add any? Okay, so this is the last section of the presentation.
There's two more. I'll go quick. I can see the time is catching up with us. But I know that somebody did earlier you did ask about race and that kind of stuff. I got to a point in my photography where let me say this. I shoot 35 millimeter focal length exclusively for years and years and years. That's my favorite focal length. And then I just wanted to experiment a bit more, and I wanted to try a little bit of a different point of view. So I was trying out a 28 millimeter, and I wanted to see how close I could get. Was wanted to get some kind of, this like closeness, as it were. And I started experimenting and getting quite close up to people, which we just spoke about. And besides just getting close, I didn't necessarily want to turn it into portrait photography, you know. I still wanted to make it interesting, even though again, I really enjoy this image. It's not my favorite street image. And I kept on exploring this theme. There we go. With different kinds of framing, different kinds of like how close can I get? What is close? That kind of thing. And I felt like even though now I could get closer and I was getting closer, there still wasn't something interesting for me at least in the pictures that I saw that I was making. The like this one, for instance, he almost looks like a character. And within street photography, you get these, subgenres. So people only go out looking for characters that look interesting, and that's their whole style. And again, even though I enjoy all of it, I still wanted something that told a bit more of a bigger story than just this kind of like, oh, there's someone that looks interesting. Um, And then I saw this kid sitting in the back of a taxi, and he had his what looked like his sibling on his lap, and he was looking out into the streets, like just with this very pensive kind of look that I thought was quite enduring and quite you know that draws you in. We've got the reflection there of the mosque there in Durban that's quite popular. Everybody should know it. And I just felt like there was quite a few things in this image that I enjoyed, which was this popular monument, if you will, of Durban just being shown in a different way, and then plus with this character that's kind of looking out into the street with this look, and I think anybody that looks at this image could ask a question like, I wonder what he's going through this kid's mind, as he's navigating himself through the world. So even though I like, these like little themes of whether it's school and sleeping and that kind of stuff, sometimes you get this mix. And I like it when a picture can be more than one thing, and then when people can interpret it different ways, where it's like, oh, reflections and the character, and oh, there's an interesting monument. I like it when they kind of mesh together to create something interesting. So I'm gonna move on just in the sake of time, and then we could take the questions at the end because I just have one more kind of section to show, okay? So just still on the theme of close a little bit. I remember I was walking through the city one of the days during midday, and I started witnessing, it's quite these funky and elaborate hats that some people are wearing. And, my eye, just something a bit different, got attracted to it. And um, I walked straight down. I was making my way through the intersection. So, from one robot to the next one robot. Every time the robot turned green to walk, I would walk with the crowd and started taking pictures of the crowd, but purposely, intentionally looking out for, these hats kind of thing. Um, but then someone drew here on here. Can you erase this green line,
Rory,
Mbusi?
can
Yeah.
you just stop share and reshare? Are you able to do that? I'm not too sure how to get rid of the line. Oh,
Yep.
okay. Thank you. Because
Sure.
it's gone now. Okay. Thank you.
There you go. Yeah, and like I was drawn to these. Let me get rid of this too. I was drawn to these hats initially, and that was the thing that got me drawn to it. But then, when I got home, I started reviewing my images for the day, and I saw, this, the harsh midday sun and these hidden figures under the hats. I thought, oh, okay, that's actually quite interesting. This hidden figure, this headgear, and I found it quite visually appealing, to be quite honest. And then next few times I went out again. It's in the subconscious, in the back of my mind. Every time I saw something that represented it, or that kind of theme, then that's what would attract me. Um, and this is just another version of that. These two friends, yeah, walking through the streets, completely covered, just the eyes sticking out, and um, just another version of this hidden figure, headgear, and that kind of thing. And I kept on playing with it and looking for these kinds of images, especially like this image is also interesting, just how like a hat, this wave hat is quite beautiful. Her one eye, a bright yellow top, how she's checking out her nails. And I still wanted to find something that was even still a bit more interesting. And then, I happened upon this. There was this woman sitting here, and she looked. I remember crossing the street, turning to the left. I could see her, like kind of bowing her head, and instantly I knew, because I've been thinking about this headgear, and hidden figure and that kind of thing. It wasn't something that I looked at, thought, maybe that'll make an interesting picture. I walked across the street, saw her, beeline towards her, and all I was hoping was that she doesn't lift her head. When I go and take a picture, and I knew the kind of angle that I wanted. I think it's quite beautiful with the sun shining through her hat, the sun rays hitting the back of her neck, and this peacefulness that she kind of exudes as she's sitting there. It's again, this was middle of the day, middle of the week, very busy city, and she just looked like one of one that were quite, centered in all this chaos. Yeah. And that's what I have to show you for today.
Thank you so much for sharing a selection of the images that you've been working on over the past 10 years and just showing us that there's things that you can celebrate out of the ordinary, because you just go out there and people are just leaving, and then you spot something and you create these beautiful images. And yeah, thanks. There is something from Rohini again. She has a different question.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the images you produce evoke nostalgia and remind you of your childhood? And do you ever try to frame images view from your view from when you were a child?
Do I try to frame images from my view when I was a child? I'm not too sure I understand that question, but as far as nostalgia is concerned, I shoot a lot of film. I grew up, as I said, like in the 80s and 90s. My father used to used to do photography. He showed me the way around the camera. He taught me the exposure triangle, that kind of thing, and I learned on film. So I still shoot a lot of film. So in a sense, yes, there is a lot of well, at least I feel a lot of nostalgia. Maybe it doesn't necessarily come through in the images. And as I said at the beginning, like Durban, I used to be there every weekend with my mother growing up. So yes, there's definitely a sense of nostalgia. I'm not too sure what the second part of that question was.
Maybe let's try to have Rohini come on and express
Yeah.
it by speaking. Rohini, can you unmute and let us know what you meant?
Yes, hi everyone. Hi Rory. I'm
Hello.
sorry, I didn't know how to frame that question myself, but I was trying to get a sense of, do you ever try to take images um from your sense of view when you were a child, like try to remember a certain setting from when you were a child and try to recapture that moment,
Yeah.
if it makes sense.
Maybe not in the streets, maybe not there, because I always have my camera with me. It's how old is everyone in this group? I joke around as like my Tamagotchi or my fidget widget or something, because it's always with me. And so, you know, now I'm the father that's taking pictures of everyone all the time on family holidays and that kind of thing. So, yeah, definitely. I'm definitely trying to capture a part of my childhood, especially when I'm taking pictures of my nieces, nephews, my son. Yeah.
Thanks. So, last question before I pass it on to Neve, and then we can wrap up. The book that you are planning to release,
Yeah,
do
okay.
you plan on adding any layers to how you make images, or are there any things that you want to change? What what is the process of making going to look like for your book? Is it going to stay the same? Do you want
Yeah.
to add some things that you've learned? Do you want to
Eh,
get rid of certain things? How does that look?
Um, I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, a friend of mine that shoots at me quite often, Ricky, is always telling me that, we should just put together something and put it out, kind of thing. And I'm always of the opinion like, it's, I don't have anything good yet to put together. But the kind of book that I would want to put together is, the only thing that I do know is that I like knowing how people got to the images that they got to, whether it's conceptually or even technically, like how the image was made. And so yeah, so it won't be just a series of pictures, between two covers. There will be some text. Now, especially like books that are holdable. You get some photo books that are like coffee size books kind of thing. I want the kind of book where somebody can take it with them and be out in the street and open it, page through it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and thanks to everyone who was online. Some people had to leave because they had other things to do, but thanks to everyone who's still here. And yeah, thanks a lot, Rory. And I hope this was insightful and useful for everyone who attended. It was very interesting for me to get to know stories behind the images. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Neve, you can
Wrap up.
wrap.
I'm alive, so people can go eat supper. Thanks. I think I just want to make some comments and takeaways. I think at the beginning you made a really important announcement, and you do photography because it fulfills you. And I think all of us photographers, no matter what, if we do street photography, documentary, studio, it really is something that is for us and we understand it. So I think that was an important thing just to remind. I mean, it is so much fun actually just to go out with the camera. We have a photo walk this Saturday. There's a lot of people coming, but you are invited. We'll send you some information. But thanks, Rory. And just to continue the conversations about street photography and CAP, and we definitely like to be in conversation and look at images, number one. And that's there was a question about ethics and all of that. And street photography has often been, it's really about the one person going out and making and getting that one quick fleeting moment. And documentary is a bit more long form, and you kind of get to know people's names. So I think that might help people just differentiate the two. And it's not to say one is better than the other. They all definitely have skill. It's time. It's your vision. I could not make this image. You saw this. So it's everyone's perspective. And that's why you make photos. It's a lot of fun and it's super interesting. So thanks, Rory, for sharing. And yeah, hopefully we'll get to see more and we'll work with you some more. I'd love to work on that publication. I mean, we're super into that. And yeah, so anyone else who's interested, please reach out. We want to get to know people. You can follow us on Instagram. We're pretty active. Yeah. So thank you, Rory. I'm gonna.
Thank you. Thanks again for having me, guys. And yeah, I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.